Just got spookily quiet, so I guess it's time to start now. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your interest in this session. You're in generational health, the state of AgeTech and the DMV, and we're really excited about this conversation. Before we jump into all the goodies that we're going to share this afternoon, I do want to be crystal clear about something that I think that's on most of your minds. You're probably not a foreigner. You're probably not surprised to see AARP here, but perhaps you haven't heard about what AARP Innovation Labs is. But let's do a quick poll. By show of hands, who has even heard of AARP Innovation Labs before? Okay, all right, you surprised me, right? Normally, lots of people haven't heard of AARP Innovation Labs. You're familiar with AARP. We know that the brand is pretty strong, but we took a really big leap and made a huge investment in the work that we're doing in the innovation space. And so before we jump into our conversation and what you've committed to be here today for, I just want to share with you quickly what we do at AARP Innovation Labs. We're very committed to the AgeTech space. We do 4 things. He just held up his AARP card in the back. Thank you, sir. We do 4. That is great. That's awesome.
You get the door prize.
And I didn't even pay him. I didn't even pay you. We do 4 things at AARP Innovation Labs. Of course, we do many more, but we do 4 core things. First, we're a product shop, so we develop products and services from scratch. And I won't steal Rick Robinson's thunder. Rick is our VP of product development, and so he'll share a little bit more about that during our conversation. The second vertical is startup engagement, and that is where we find some of the best and brightest startups all over the world to collaborate with in service of our mission. Third, we have a design thinking shop. So we're looking to make sure that our startups and internally across our enterprise, we're focused on human-centered design, making sure we keep the human at the center of everything that we're doing. And fourth, we are a space. Many of you, I see some familiar faces in the room. We have an innovation lab called The Hatchery. It's a 10,000 square foot innovation lab, and that's where we work, that's where we invite our startups, and that's where we do this important work. And each of these 4 verticals is all in service of our greater mission, which is to empower people to choose to live how they want as they age. And we just do that through disruptive innovation. So without further ado, I'd like to get into the conversation around AgeTech. And we'll start out with the introduction by all of our panelists, starting with you, Mr. Rick Robinson.
Hi, thank you. My name is Rick Robinson. I'm the Vice President of Product Development for the AARP Innovation Lab. I have a history of building products for consumers as well as SaaS platforms, and that's in tech as well as media and a lot of things in between.
Fantastic. I'm Dr. Charlene Brown. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Caregiver Jobs Now, previously called Reciprocare. And I have spent my career crossing between clinical medicine, global and domestic public health, and now entrepreneurship. My company connects caregiving professionals to jobs in senior care and healthcare, and it helps companies that are hiring caregivers to save time and money sourcing talent.
Robin?
Hi, I'm Robin Glasco. I am a co-founder and managing partner of Bambü Healthcare Advisors Investing. I like to say that I'm a recovering corporate executive. So my last corporate job was I was the Chief Innovation Officer for Blue Cross Blue Shield in Massachusetts. Been in healthcare most of my career, which spans over 25 years. What I like to tell people what I did, and I like to say how I would say it with my kids, which is, mommy would figure out where we're going to grow, how we're going to grow, what products we're going to grow, and make sure that we are providing more people to safe, equitable, affordable care. So, glad to be here.
Thank you for being here. Okay, so let's first get down right to the nitty-gritty, because most of you are probably thinking, well, what is AgeTech, right? You're probably familiar with FinTech and HealthTech and all these other techs. Well, what's AgeTech, okay? So AgeTech is the intersection between longevity, which is living long, and technology, with a specific focus on innovations that improve the lives of people as they age. And it can be many things. I know one of the things that probably rises to the top of your mind when you think about aging in tech might be that little device that you saw on a commercial hanging from someone's neck. They pressed a button and, oh, I'm in trouble, help me, right? But guess what? We've advanced since then, and it's so many other things, okay? But one of the key areas that is a part of this AgeTech wave is caregiving. And so I'm going to divert my first question to Dr. Charlene. And one of the reasons why is because for many of you in the room, caregiving may be a part of your life, like your everyday life. You're taking care of a spouse, you're taking care of a loved one, you're taking care of a mother or a family member. And so the first question is to you, Dr. Charlene. And that is, you've been in this space for many years. I know from reading your bio. But what has been the most significant change that you've seen throughout your career, specifically in the AgeTech space?
As long as we're talking about caregiving and recent changes, I'd say a couple of years ago, there were a lot of startups that were going to disrupt caregiving. They were going to disintermediate the home care agencies and remove the need for home care agencies. We'll just help you find caregivers directly, and they'll go to your home and they'll be on demand. There was a lot of excitement about several startups that were going to be business to consumer startups focused on making it easier to find caregivers for your loved ones, primarily focused on the massive aging baby boomer generation. I'd say the biggest change that's happened in the last couple of years has been that almost all of those startups, or most of the startups, have shifted to a business to business model, and there's much more focus on how do you support the massive existing infrastructure that can help support care for our aging loved ones through technology. So there are fewer startups that are focused on B2C, and many of the ones, on serving consumers directly, and more of them are focused on supporting health systems, skilled nursing facilities, home care agencies, and the others. And personally, I think that's actually a move in the right direction. And I'll stop there.
No worries. It's a follow-up question that I thought of as you were talking. And
okay.
I didn't tell them there would be follow-up questions, so this is a surprise to them.
We're flexible.
When did you discover that you would be focusing on B2B? Did you first start with business to consumer and then you transition to B2B, or was it always B2B for you?
It was always B2B, and the biggest question I would get whenever I would present was, why aren't you going directly to consumers? My professional background is in medicine, but my career has really been in public health. And what public health is, it's really population health and thinking about how you improve the health of populations. How do you impact the largest number of people? Well, the majority of home care and senior care in our society is delivered through institutions. It's delivered through agencies and facilities. And I wanted to have the biggest impact because that's how I have fun. That's how I enjoy doing things. And so I wanted to work with the existing infrastructure that has some issues, but it's been around for decades. And I wanted to support that infrastructure to do a better job of being able to deliver the professionals that are so needed to care for our aging loved ones.
Thank you. So as you're talking about your product, what you're developing, how you shifted or didn't shift, how you had an initial focus when you first started, it makes me think about product development overall.
Yeah.
And Rick, I know a bit of your background because I have the honor of working with Rick. And I know that you've developed products before you came to AARP Innovation Labs, and I'm wondering how significant is it for you to shift your thinking around developing specifically in the AgeTech space versus developing in any other space?
Interesting. Yeah. So a couple of things. We try to approach things through principles of Ageless Design. So when we develop products, the idea is products that would be available and accessible to anybody at any age. The way we kind of move through that in practice when we develop products is human-centered design, which is we take a certain audience or age group, bring them in and really focus in on what their issue is. What is it that what is their need, what is their problem? And we try to take a 360-degree view of that particular person and their issue and run it through a whole model of product development that focuses just on that segment. Now, having said that, there is a bridge to kind of the past, I guess you could say, between kind of ageless design and developing for people over 50 versus, let's say, years ago, I was developing products like chat rooms and message boards at AOL, and today also developing similar products that address one issue that's common, which is loneliness. That's a huge issue among people over 50. It's also a huge issue among teenagers and younger people. So there is often a connection between the two sometimes.
Got you. I want us to give a quick vote around how you like to define this space personally. And when I say that, I mean, we're talking about AgeTech here, but I know that there's some other words that may have been thrown around as you think about developing for people as they age. And so I know I'm saying AgeTech, but I know, Dr. Charlene, there's another term that you've used. You used silver tech before. There's other technology that people have utilized. And so do we all agree that AgeTech is the best possible word, or do we think that there are other words that people have used that you feel like, that one, I resonate a little bit more with that one?
I think it's gaining some ground, gaining steam, I could say. I think it's somewhat appropriate. Some people could argue that you don't want to think of it as, just when you say age, people think of people over a certain age, so to speak. But it is definitionally correct, and I think it is gaining some momentum for sure, particularly among some VCs who are looking at this category.
Speaking of VCs, it's a good lead in to Robin, a lot of the investment work that you're doing. And I'm curious, for your company, there are lots of places where you can make bets, right? And lots of other places that you do make bets because you're not solely focused on investing in the AgeTech space.
Sure.
But I'm curious, why AgeTech, and more importantly, why now?
Now, so interestingly, a couple of things. One, I think we need to redefine and re-examine how we think about people over 50. Not too long ago, there's this perception that people over a certain age, they don't know how to turn on their phone. They don't know how to use Facebook. My daughter did an age joke where only people that are over a certain age are even on Facebook anymore. So there's all these assumptions that come with aging that we have to put aside. My grandfather is 93 years old. If I were to text him now, he would respond via text. And so, and I know many other folks that are over that 50-year-old mark that have that relationship with technology. And so, venture capitalists, we're in the business to make money, and we are living longer. And where there was and still is a lot of energy around millennials and how do we make sure we have products and services and jobs for millennials. On the other end, there's how do we make sure we have jobs and tech and interactions with people that are over 50 and beyond, because we are living longer. And so changing our mindset and placing bets where we can make money is a smart thing to do for venture capital companies. And just for anyone who's looking at selling a product or engaging with a consumer. So whether you're selling directly to someone over a certain age or a caregiver of that person, having those tools and being able to communicate and engage across different age spectrums is smart business. And again, since venture capitalists are in the business of making money, that's where we need to place our bets.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Today's 60-year-old is probably just as savvy as a 25-year-old 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it is definitely a cliche to think about, they can't deal with this kind of product or technology. It's a big oversight. Yep. And I think it's a blind spot for a lot of VCs who are thinking, younger in terms of investing in companies. And it's a mistake, in my opinion, because if you think about where the buying power is, it's really 50 and over, where the big money is. Yep. So.
Yeah, actually, go ahead. No, I've actually heard the same thing. I'm quite grown in terms of my age. I won't say what it is, but I've had people tell me I should, because I look younger than my age, to never tell anyone how old you are and just like kind of slide in with the millennials. I'm Gen X, and because there's such a perception that people over not 50, 40 don't think with as much mental acuity, and that there are all of these challenges. And so I think there's still some ageism in tech, but the massive buying power of this baby boomer generation is really not to be ignored.
Right. Yeah. I also think I read somewhere that people are retiring earlier, and so the spending power and living longer. So you have a lot of disposable income. You have a lot of different types of consumers that are, again, just not how it was 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, we find that a lot of people who are retiring.
We've taken over the panel.
I'll speak to you.
It's okay.
I was asking Jacqueline a question.
What would you like to know?
Jacqueline.
So it's true, a lot of people are retiring. They're no longer going into an office, 9 to 5, what have you. But they're not sitting at home or going to the golf course every day.
Right.
A lot of people are very active, and
Yeah.
that's another big opportunity to find ways to engage people
Yes.
who have a lot of institutional knowledge, a lot of education. That's not me.
That was cold. That's cold for you're done, Rick. No more talking for you. I'm just playing, Rick.
Too many words per minute.
Speak and tweet.
Yeah, right. It gets back to the fact that there's an opportunity. There's going to be millions of people who they're not going to sit still, but they're not going to be going to an office every day. What is an opportunity for them?
Yes.
And that's an area that one of many that we're looking at in the lab to try to figure out, is there a product that can kind of fit that need or a service?
I'm curious, Robin, though, even though you're in this space, have you found that the interest of people looking for investment, looking for support in this space has grown? Or do you find like you're actively having to search them out? Are they looking for you? Are you looking for them? Or is it a little bit of both?
So we're a little different, and I think we like to play in blue ocean. So for those of you who may not know, blue ocean is these calm waters compared to a red ocean where there's a lot of shark fighting and that sort of thing going on. So we like to play in the blue ocean and go after overlooked, undervalued opportunities. And typically what that includes are women and minority. And minority for us is not just ethnic minority, it is by age, it's disability, it's geography, it's a number of different things, again, of folks who aren't normally given a seat at the table. So we've broadened the funnel of where we like to go hunt and to include this particular segment. And we find that there aren't a ton. There's definitely more, I would say, over the past few years, as you were saying, because I think more of the caregiving space, so people needing to have the tools to take care of their parents or other folks in their family. But it's not overflowing with a lot of folks there's still a lot more energy in the younger end of the spectrum.
And that makes me wonder, like, where is the need? And so, Rick, in your area, from a product development standpoint, where are the unmet needs? Where are the unmet needs in the AgeTech space that you know need to exist? You know that it's a gap there, but for whatever reason, they just haven't been developed or haven't been addressed.
So some are kind of partially there, but not fully. I like the space of ambient awareness. So if you can imagine your home, for instance, that is wired in a way where you don't see it, but it's able to sense everything from your heartbeat, heart rate, to whether or not you've used the bathroom a certain number of times a day, if you've fallen, obvious things like that, but other inobvious things. And to be able to do proactive things, prompts, whether it's voice or otherwise, to get you to do X, Y, or Z, without the sense of the person living in the home that they're being watched or that sort of thing. So that's why I say it's ambient. I'm looking forward to more development in that space. I think communications, generally speaking, is an area that is not fully exploited well, meaning, getting back to the loneliness factor, so many people are isolated, and smart speakers are becoming really popular, and I do believe that AI is going to get to a point where you'll be able to have an intelligent conversation with a bot effectively. And people want human connection, and they can tell the difference and will for years to come. So I see smart speakers evolving to having an initial engagement with a bot, basically, but then it turns into a conversation with a human who you may not know, but has similar characteristics to you as a way to make connections.
So a smart speaker is different than an Alexa.
Same as
Amazon.
an
It's the
Alexa.
same thing.
Yep.
Okay, but instead there's a human on the other side that continues the conversation beyond when they've learned who you
If
are.
you imagine, so you engage and this is, I'm just imagining this now, you're imagining you engage the bot and you're talking with it and it senses that, or you can just proactively say, I'd like to talk to somebody about X, Y, or Z subject. It makes a smart connection to somebody else who has that, call it an Alexa, and suddenly you're talking human to human through the device. It brings a whole nother level of connection. And I think that is an area that needs to be developed and will be developed. So I think those are a couple of areas. There's some that we're exploring in the lab right now that involve relationships over 50. I won't get into a lot of details there, but it's difficult for people to find and make connections. I'm not talking about a personal business here. We're talking about how do people go about doing it without a lot of cruft. There's also the area of crises. We found a lot of people have crises in their life that they're not aware, that nobody expects it. Whether it's somebody who dies or something dramatic happens and suddenly your life is turned upside down. And there's not really any resources we found that immediately can help. So we're looking at, is there a service that can immediately help you with all of these issues that arise when some dramatic thing happens? One other area that I think is going to be, it's going to be huge over the next few years, but it's not there yet. There's over 50 million people in the US who have significant hearing loss. So hearables, what people are calling them, not really hearing aids, but they'll be able to do things that you may wear in some ways. You may not see them, but they'll be able to enhance your hearing. They'll be able to do a lot of other things as well. You could just sort of whisper to yourself a question and it could hit Google and come back with the answer into your ear, things like that. So things that, I think hearables is a big area that's coming too, that's not there yet.
Okay, thank you.
Just to amplify the loneliness component, it's interesting because we have never been more connected and yet the increasing numbers of folks who are reporting themselves or self-reporting as lonely, just fascinating.
It's from children to seniors. It's across the board.
Yes.
So yes, technology has kind of hit us at both ends.
Yes, right.
So, but I think technology is the way to, the salve for that. So absolutely. That's one thing we're looking at.
For people who may be in the audience or just in general, Robin, if they're thinking, you know what, I need to go down the investment path, or I want to go down the investment path, or I just want to know how it works so that when I'm ready to go down that path, I know how to do it. What do you look for? So what are the shiny characteristics or the things that are just like, oh, that company stands out to me and that interests me?
So I am a fan of human-centered design, and so for those of you who are not aware, Google it. There's tons of resources out there. The short version is that you don't design anything, a product or service, without truly falling in love with the problem or the unmet need. And so, so if you are thinking about getting into or starting some entrepreneur venture for yourself, make sure you are in love with the problem. And when I say in love with the problem, that means that usually in most businesses, we fall in love with our solutions and then we go looking for a buyer to purchase the solution. And that really narrows down the funnel because you're looking for someone who's looking for a size 9 brown shoe, right? So if you're falling in love with the problem, and the problem might be, how do I design shoes for people who feel uncomfortable wearing them? Your funnel is a lot bigger. And then you will come up with many different solutions to that. So definitely fall in love with the problem. And then the other thing is we invest in people, not things. Because technology comes and goes. I mean, Rick named off a number of technology that is yet to be here, that probably will be obsolete. Technology comes and goes. Solutions come and go. We aren't carrying, although I did see someone with, I think it was an iPhone 2 or 3. I was like, good Lord, child, you need to upgrade. Any event, but most of us are not exposed or utilizing technology that's beyond a few years old. And so if you're falling in love with your solution, not so much. We fall in love with the person. And so being able to see your passion, being able to see that you have really thought through the operations model. And by that, it's kind of in 3 parts that we look at, which is desirability. Does somebody want this? Is this solving a true unmet need? Feasibility. Does the thing work? And does it have some long-term shelf life? Will it be obsolete because you're using old, dated technology solutions tools? And is it viable? In the business to make money, will this make money? And so those are really the 3 things that we look for, but we're looking at the person and how they're thinking about those 3 things. And most of what's happening, and I think this is where I think what we brought up before, is that there's been a significant rise of startups, more so, particularly in healthcare than, I mean, I've been here a long time. I think ACA was one of the big catalysts, and then the investment dollars just started coming. They started printing money somewhere. And so but with that said, it's rare to find those categories that are not saturated with a lot of solutions and companies out there. So really understanding the business that you're in and where you can differentiate and just make sure you are driving that home, because there are many different solutions, many different overlapping companies that are going after similar problems. And so making sure you're falling in love with that right problem that also might make you unique and stand out.
So you probably see a lot of deal flow.
Yeah.
How many of those are run by entrepreneurs over 50? That tells me the answer.
So not a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, my favorite one there's 8 of us, we are super excited about is a woman that is closer to 65 than to 55. And she's brought with her some friends that are also doing things in that same age category. Wow. I'll just say wow, but that's the exception, not the rule.
That is the exception.
Yeah, a lot of fresh out of college.
Is that because of the energy level, and you feel as a VC you could get younger people to work around the clock and they don't have families and they don't have all the ties that bind? Or in the trade-off versus finding an entrepreneur who's older, has a lot of experience, but they may have things that hold them back? Is there?
Yeah.
Do you think of it in a binary
absolutely.
way? Or?
I think about it quite a bit, and I blame credit like the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, who. So I used to hire interns all year round. They're cheap labor, and they have changed my mindset of the younger generation. I've just come across some fascinating, brilliant-minded youngins. But one of the things that sorry, saw a squirrel. Now, one of the things that I credit and blame Mark Zuckerberg for is they all think they should be making $1 million right out of college, or go college and make $1 million. I'm going to do the startup and I'm going to make $1 million, but several million dollars, and retire and buy this, and on to the next one. I'll be on my 3rd company by the time I'm 25.
Those are called entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and so and there's a lot of that, and coupled with just from an academic standpoint. So I just recently moved from Boston. No accent, I was only there 3.5 years. And there are more colleges and universities in the condensed area, and many of them are teaching entrepreneurship as part of the curriculum. So, and actually, I sit on a board called Build, which who knew that this day and age that there still is a problem in high school dropouts. Mm-hmm. And so introducing entrepreneurship in 9th grade. These kids at 14 years old have started their own business, have learned to pitch their ideas. I don't think I would get in a room more than 3 people, and these kids are just learning at an earlier age. So I look at the curriculum, and my kids are they've aged out of they're both graduated from college already. So, but that was not available just when they were in high school so many years ago. So I think just in terms of what we're seeing, a lot of younger entrepreneurs, and people are like, oh, I can do that. The Kylie Jenners, I mean, she doesn't help either. And then you also have it's being taught in, as a curriculum. And again, I'll say the third thing is there's a lot of money that is being thrown into some of these verticals.
That makes me think about the why, though.
Yeah.
The entire crux of like why. And Dr. Charlene, I want to pull you into this. You know, there are lots of things or lots of areas you could focus on in the AgeTech space, lots of different areas, but clearly you focused in caregiving. And I'm curious about like why there? Why are you so passionate about that space?
It's interesting. I will say that I did set out to create a company in the AgeTech space, and my company really crosses AgeTech, healthcare, HR tech, but I fell in love with the problem, actually. So I found that there was this pain that I had never seen anything like before. I'd been told, I had mentors who'd said, oh, when you're starting a company, like look for the pain. And I participated in a startup weekend, and we spent the whole weekend just talking to stakeholders. And I talked to a bunch of home health care workers, nursing assistants, other frontline caregivers delivering care, including some in my family. And the exquisite pain of not having enough hours, not being able to get enough work, was a complete mismatch from what I knew as a public health professional, that there's this escalating demand for caregivers, for caregiving professionals. And the term caregiver is often used to describe family members taking care of their loved ones. When I use it, I'm talking about the professional caregivers, the nursing assistants, home health aides, med techs, and others who are helping our seniors to age with grace. And so that workforce, there was a dynamic that made no sense. Like caregivers in pain, coupled with employers, nursing facilities failing regulatory audits because they're understaffed, home care agencies turning away clients because they don't have enough staff to take care of all the business that's coming their way. And data from PHI, which is a research organization that studies caregivers in our country, saying that there's only 40 to 50% of caregivers are fully employed. So you have these dynamics that made no sense to me. Unhappy caregivers not making enough money, not getting enough work, and earning near minimum wage. So you have a low-income workforce that is not doing well. But there is a for-profit incentive, which is the delivery of care, and companies that want to make money, and their money is entirely dependent on that workforce, coupled with inefficient use of the workforce. And I was hooked. I was like, oh my God, it's a problem. Everyone's unhappy, and it affects the population, and it deals with poor people. It had all the things that get me excited. And so that's literally, I brought the, like 3, 4, 5 iterations ago, precursor of an idea to that startup weekend, and we won the startup weekend, right? And I went in the next day to my boss and said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just giving you notice, because I fell in love in a weekend, and I moved to part-time and spent the next 6 months really actually vetting the idea. I joined the Maryland National Capital Home Care Association. I held focus groups. I did tons of things to really make sure that weekend wasn't a fluke before I gave up my job, but it wasn't. And so that's why I chose this. It wasn't because I necessarily wanted to, I must serve seniors. It was more like I must find a problem that impacts health, populations, and poverty, and this was one.
The energy that I'm getting from Dr. Charlene and her passion and excitement is the equal excitement I think that anyone in the labs team gets when we talk to our startups. So we work with lots of startups from all over the country, some from across the world, and a lot of times most times what they started rooted in a problem, it rooted in a personal experience. Maybe your grandmother was isolated in a senior care facility, or she took her medicine at the wrong time, and that all started like the kernel of an idea. And so I get the same vibe of energy from you and excitement that we get from our startups. But it's still excitement that happens on the other side too, not just startups who are creating, but also on the corporate side, like people who are excited and passionate about this work. And not necessarily, I'm going to ask you both the exact same question, why this work, and not necessarily why AARP Innovation Labs, although I know why AARP Innovation Labs, because you love us, right? But more so, why is product development and service development and tinkering and creating, why is that a passion for you? And why do you think that is? Your question's coming next, Robin.
So not the same one?
No.
Okay.
No.
For me, it's just something I have to do. It's a way to express my creativity. And I also think it's a connection. It's a conduit, it's a catalyst between me and people in need. And I can create something that connects me to them. That's satisfying to me. Yep.
It's so simple. I expected more.
I can give you more.
That's okay. Not right now. Robin, same question.
Oh, okay.
And I know. No, I'm just joking. Not the same question. I know that the easy answer could be to make money, right?
Yeah.
I know that, but it's probably something else, right?
Sure. I very similar to Rick. I have always, from my earliest memory, I love tackling problems. Strange. I almost went to school to be a math major, but then, anyway. So I love tackling problems. And so making something better for someone, it just really excites me. So whether it's interior design, whether it's designing a better service, a better product, I love tackling problems. And I love seeing the impact of what I do for people, making their lives simpler. So it's things like, there's interesting that we are inundated with design everywhere, and a lot of bad design everywhere. Anyone ever tried to pull on a door that you can only push? Back in the day, anyone ever left their ATM card in the ATM?
Yeah.
Those are examples of bad design, small problems. I mean, we're talking about bigger problems here, but
Like these chairs.
But what'd you say?
Like these chairs.
Yeah, what we said. I mean, I'm in a skirt sitting on. I digress. But it is. I just see the world in how can we make this better? It's something I can't turn off. I was in this I'm forgetting the name. I'm awful with names. He's the head guy, or was the head guy at Netflix, and he's created a lot of different products. And he was taking us on the journey of how Netflix came to be Netflix and the different iterations. And I just was like, oh my God, that's so awesome. But a lot of the examples that he used was around bad design and his passion for overcoming bad design. And it's just, he just started listing off all the things in our world that we encounter every day that just annoys us. Yeah. And so for me, I just can't turn it off. I just cannot, I just can't turn it off.
Yeah, I like your point about solving problems.
Yeah.
So frequently people will say, that's impossible, you can't do that.
Yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, nothing drives you more than someone saying you can't do it.
Right.
So that's also a driver for me anyway.
Yeah.
I'm pretty fortunate to work with a dynamic set of really smart people at AARP Innovation Labs. In particular, I think about our design thinking team that makes us question like everything, but why? Ask more questions. Did you ask? Did you poll? Did you survey, et cetera? And they maybe even question something that I would say years ago I would have put a number on myself, and I don't even know if I can do that anymore. And that's, what do you consider old? Like what's old to you? And so what do you guys think? Like when you think what is old, what comes to mind?
Are you looking at me?
Because I know you have an answer. And let me first say why I brought that up. It's because some of you may be thinking, this AgeTech space is important to me, and I'm passionate about it. And now my eyes are bigger, and I want to do more. Which, if that's what you're thinking, this panel worked. First of all, but it's interesting once we start to educate the community and even your friends and family about what people are really doing over 50. I mean, many of you probably are thinking, I'm over 50 and I do this. I haven't stopped living. I haven't stopped dreaming, or whatever it is. And so I think it's important for us to constantly remind ourselves that we are capable of great things as we age. And so I want to bring it back to the panel and ask them, like, what do you consider old?
So I think it's a state of mind. It's not an age. I think old is somebody who says I can't. ... Good
answer.
As soon as you get to that point, I consider that's when you've stopped progressing. So I think it's important for people at any age to understand that you can. There are ways you can do anything that you want to do, whether it's the help of technology or just changing your mindset and realizing you can do things. So keeps you young.
Dr. Charlene?
Over 80.
Over 80, okay.
So
I'm clear, this is what it is.
That's when more health problems start to accumulate in your body. The age of your body actually starts to manifest more so in deterioration of health, but that can also be staved off. I just read this article about this 82-year-old bodybuilder who lives in Maryland who runs 10 miles a day, right? So I don't run 10 miles a day. Am I old or is she old, right? So I agree that it's not a number, but I do think numbers can serve as a proxy. For certain trends and phenomenon. When I was younger, I thought 50 was old, like when I was 20, right? And I really do not. So I think the definition or the framework for aging has changed as we are living longer, and as technology and society makes it easier to be engaged for as long as you want. My parents are in their 70s, in their late 70s, and they are not old. So I say over 80, but my mom walks 5 miles a day, and my dad, they're always out and about and doing things, and they're so, they are not my stereotype of what like retirement would look like.
Sure.
They're too busy, right? So I don't know what old is, but physiologically, from a healthcare standpoint, I'd say over 80.
Got it. Robin?
Yeah, I don't have a number to it. I definitely think it's a mindset. And the story that I'll tell, very similar to you, Dr. Charlene, is that, so when my son turned 21, he was at college, and I flew in and surprised him and showed up at his 21st birthday celebration. Now,
Not a good
when
idea.
I turned 21, I would, if my mother showed up, I'm like, quick, everybody had the alcohol. I just started drinking in front of my mother. So, and people were like, you're doing what? But my kids actually like to hang out with me. I'm like, I'm gonna ride that for as long as I can. And their friends, like there were some other mothers and fathers that were there at my son's 21st birthday celebration.
Wow.
His friends are texting me like, we're trying to keep him sober, and I'm like, I don't want to know this. We've gone a little too far. I don't want to know this, but but yeah, I think it has definitely shifted. I would never invite my old mother when I was 21, who was in her 40s. Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely shifted.
My mom actually did show up when I was in college. We did not have cell phones. We didn't have beepers.
No warning.
We didn't have anything. And they sat for like 4 hours because I was out and about. They just showed up for my birthday, not a party.
Oh,
to
I showed up
surprise
for
me.
the party.
Yeah.
I was the surprise for the party.
It was kind of a risky thing to do. I'll just say that.
All right, so I want to make sure that we have the time to get questions answered. And so we want to open it up for a few questions before we leave you with some information to get in contact with anyone on the panel, and also want to provide each of you with a special invitation to something that we're producing in a couple of weeks over at AARP Innovation Lab. But first, your questions. Are there any questions in the audience? Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. I really enjoyed this panel. This is fantastic. My name is Fran Bishop. I'm president and CEO of Aerobodies. We're a health IT firm. And a couple of things that you all said resonated with me in terms of the over 50. So I'm an over 50 and that's another over 50. And the challenge is that I think that people assume that as a president in an existing company, you're not already innovating and coming up with new things. I mean, they look for the millennials to come up with it, who quite frankly haven't had the business experience, where those who have been in the trenches already know the problems and are trying to solve those. So I'm wondering if you all can speak to what we need to think, those of us who are in the audience that are already in existing careers or in existing businesses and are, again, looking to extend that and to look at innovation. There's a lot of labs with large companies now, there's lots of VCs. Some of us have been invited to be in some of these programs, but quite frankly, you really have to split your time, and you really spoke to that, and it's a business case, right? So can you speak to the process perhaps a little bit in terms of how you decide what VC, what company that you really want to partner up with and go after? Because everyone kind of looks at things a little bit differently in terms of what the business case is, but also the resource in terms of time, which is the most valuable resource.
Do you want to go?
Well, to your last point, when you're looking for a VC, you want to find somebody who sees eye to eye with what you're trying to do, who wants to be a partner in helping you solve the problem you're trying to solve. But if you're talking about people who just have free time and they want to contribute and be part of something,
No, the former, not the latter.
the former, yeah. So there are lots of events just in the DC area where you can go and you can meet, like DC Tech Meetup. That's a place you can go and not only meet entrepreneurs but also VCs, and find a way to find those who might kind of connect with you in terms of your issue that you're trying to solve before you try to dive in and get money out of them. So I don't know if that sort of touched on your question or not.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm hoping you all can speak a little bit more to the process as well. Not necessarily, there's lots of resources, quite frankly, but then that still takes time to figure out which still is the right resource.
Sure.
But more so to the process, like an AARP or an Exelon or a Accenture. What are you all looking for in terms of, again, the business case of the investment from the entrepreneur standpoint?
Yeah.
Because if you're in business, you're not no longer an entrepreneur, you're running the business. So
Right.
how do you then capitalize on the innovation and taking that innovation? Do you actually have to look at maybe bring in someone else who can run that component, and you have now a COO that's going to run that innovation so you can continue to bring in the profits to look for the customers that could buy that. You know what I mean? So
I can.
Yeah, and I have a bit. So go
Okay,
first.
so I'm new to the entrepreneur world. So I've spent in an old organization, Blue Cross, and I was Kaiser Permanente for 100 years before that. So lots of deep roots. And there's an equation that I'm going to steal from one of my doctor friends: OO plus NT equals EOO. Old organization plus new technology equals an expensive old organization. And so that meaning part of what I think for whatever the business case is, you have to prime the pump and ready the organization to receive it. So that I don't believe in innovation as something you do over here and then you do your day job. It's truly shifting the mindset of the organization. And so the process that we use actually was introducing human-centered design. We started with the process, and then we quickly iterated and said we have to teach the mindsets, but using a true business challenges. So taking the business challenges and using that as a use case to teach people how to think different so that they go back to their day jobs and are ready to receive any new type of product, technology, VC. It also, and having witnessed this at 2 organizations, same entrepreneur could be coming to pitch their company. And old mindset would be turned off, can't see beyond this. New mindset, having shifted the thinking, it's opened up to more possibilities. And the nature of a business case has shifted more to a human-centered pain problem that we're trying to solve, and then going out finding and inviting companies that can help solve that and fill that gap. But it takes some time. We were able to kind of make that pivot in about 1.5 years, but I don't know if that gets to your...
absolutely.
Okay.
I think it was you had a multi-pronged question. Like, it was a lot of questions. You tricked us. It was multiple questions. It was multiple questions up in there. But to add on a bit, every process organizationally is going to be different. Like, our process and how we engage with startups is going to be different from Ernst & Young or any other. It's just going to be much different. I mean, we partner with some dynamic accelerators from across the country to find some of the best and brightest startups. And we do that through challenge statements. We issue challenge statements. We do pitch competitions. And so every company, regardless of who it is going to be a little bit different, and the process isn't going to be the same.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, let's get a couple more questions. Yes.
Hi. I have a question about my generation growing up and getting older, and I want to know how do you see my generation or younger generation, how they are gonna age, and in terms of relationships and loneliness and human connection. Because my generation, we are always on our phones. Our connections or social interaction are through Instagram or through other technological applications. And how do you see us age or not only age, but getting in relations with our partners or peers? And how will that affect your business? Sorry.
Well, I mean, I'll take a shot at it. I think, for one thing, as you age, you're not gonna have a cell phone. It'll be something else. It may not even be an object that you're holding. So the way I look at it is technology changes, but human needs are universal and always will be. So the need to connect. I look to you and your generation to figure that out. To not build technologies that pull people apart, but instead bring them together. So I do think that we've reached a point in the last 2-3 years where people are finally realizing that the technology that's been developed, particularly social technology, has driven people apart in many ways. And so the tide is, kind of shifting, and people are, as you know, looking at ways to sort of right that a little bit. But I would put it back on your generation to tell us how to do it. We look for startups who have the answers. So.
There's your problem to fall in love with. Fall in love with that problem. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm a person who's into science fiction. And you have a person on the panel who's dealing with caregivers and caretakers. And that role of caregivers and caretakers is being redefined now as to who you take care of and so forth. So as I deal with all of you, when we look at technology from the aspect of what is the future of technology for the mental health, for the developmental disabled population, for the handicapped population, when you look at smart homes, take that for example and build on top of that. What is the future for people who are aging, who are still dealing from the aspect of a health issue in developmental disabled and handicapped?
So you're asking which technologies do you see that might be developed or are the future of people who are disabled?
Yeah, what's the future of that? And take a smart home as an example.
Yeah, I'll say one thing. I know that Rick has some insight here, and Robin and Dr. Charlene might as well. I think that there are some interesting new approaches to those challenges. Like, for example, if I think about people who are disabled, right, or can't, or have mobility issues, I think about even a challenge that we've engaged in from an AARP Innovation Lab standpoint. And so we have a pretty significant presence at the Consumer Electronics Show every year, or for the past year, and we'll be there for 2020. And we've just launched a Hackster Challenge that is solely developed or solely focused on seeing across the world who can present some technologies, some innovations that are in line with a robotic cane. And so think about a cane that you don't necessarily have to, or some type of device, let me not just say a cane, that you don't necessarily have to mobily move yourself, but it helps to move you. And so from our standpoint, we're, while we have a dynamic product team that looks to solve things like this, we're also looking to see who else out in the world is looking to solve things of this nature. But I'm sure Rick has some other insights on this as well.
Well, yeah. To key off of that, there is a lot of technology being developed today. I mean, there's exoskeletons that are being developed for people who are unable to walk to help them to actually walk. I see that sort of technology becoming part of the mainstream in the next 20 or so years. And to your point about smart home, I think of it more like, as I said before, ambient smart home. In other words, the technology disappears, and it also, through machine learning, can learn if you have disabilities. Over time can learn, over a short amount of time, can learn what those are and try to make your life easier as you go through the day within your, whatever your environment is in your home. That all is being developed right now as we speak.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
I've been involved with longevity issues in my county for about 10 years now. It's been a long slog. I want to commend AARP on your longevity index that you use by zip code. I think that's been a very big help for the entire country. Having said that, I want to make some suggestions to you. One, I never heard about the longevity labs. I get your magazine, I get your newspaper, nary a word have I seen since I turned 50.
Can I get you to come over to the office and talk to our PR people?
You need to tell people what you're doing.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a second suggestion. You've all talked about social isolation. Every single one of you. People in the middle class are the ones who basically fund AARP. People that are wealthy, they take care of themselves. People on the low end have a lot of social network that's provided for them. Middle class, not so much. What's out there right now, and people are doing it in self-defense basically, is the village network, which I'm sure some of you have heard of. And it's something that AARP should be funding right across the board. And I'm talking about not major grants, but small grants, because all of these are nonprofits. They are the ones where the rubber hits the road, making sure that people are not socially isolated.
You know what I'll chime in on here, right here on is I completely agree with you. Like literally, this year we made 5 pitch competition stops across the country. Everywhere from Berkeley to Boston. We stopped in the middle of the country at Nashville. And every single pitch competition stop that we made this year was rooted in social isolation and social connection. And the reason why we decided to make more stops in the middle of the country, particularly Nashville, is because we really wanted to go to the community and not just have these huge pitch competition stops in New York or in Berkeley, where a lot of the attention is already at from a startup standpoint. We also wanted to get into the community and make sure that we do our job in discovering organizations that are building stuff for social isolations and social connections. So I'm with you. We understand the importance of it. And I do have to point to the work of our foundation, AARP Foundation, which is hugely rooted in social isolation and social connection. There's a whole innovation arm, particularly there, that helps to fund social enterprise entrepreneurs and encouraging and supporting the work that they're doing. But I agree with you, there's much more that can be done all across the world in social isolation and social connection space. And I'm happy to talk with you after to connect you maybe with some people internally that specifically focus on that work.
The village network basically has solved that problem.
Okay.
I mean,
Yep.
it's working.
It's very interesting.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, okay,
Yep.
thank you. Other questions? Yes, sir.
What role do you see for social robots, intelligent robots with AI going forward? Not to replace health workers, but to supplement.
His question was, what role do we see social robots playing? And when I hear social robots, I think of an in-home robot that's a companion that just keeps me company, or maybe tackles social isolation. What do we think? What role do we think social robots play? Would you welcome a social robot in your home, Robin?
I think so. I know a lot of people, so the only social robot I have in my home now is Alexa. And she freaks me out sometimes because she'll just start talking. I'm like, no one said Alexa. But I'm okay with it. I don't live some double life, so I'm not afraid of some sort of technology coming into my life and reporting what I'm saying. So I'm okay with that. And I do think that I think someone brought up that the wave of the future will be that companion, that the things that we're doing now, from cleaning to ordering and just things that we already are physically doing, will be replaced by these robots.
Yeah, I see them as, there's a couple of different things. There's robots, quote unquote.
Yeah.
They won't be necessarily the way
Sure.
they look today, that will be there to help you. But I also see everyone having a doppelganger in the future.
Oh no, Rick!
No, sorry. That you're able to control, who can do things for you when you're asleep or you're not at home.
I hope not.
I go to meetings.
Sit in panels. I'm actually at work right
You're
now.
not at work.
That is going to happen,
Yeah.
and it'll happen in your lifetime.
Wow. Yeah.
So there's a woman who is in
Oh,
my
certainly.
line of
Okay,
sight
yes,
who's-
yes. You're going to be our last
Yeah.
question of today. Absolutely. Thank you,
She
Dr.
just keeps raising her hand.
Saying thank you to the panel. All the information that you shared was absolutely fantastic, especially for someone like me who's been a member of AARP for a long time. And I went, whoa. There we go. But I thank you because it gave me a sense of hope in terms of thinking outside the box with respect to starting a business. So the question I have for anyone on the panel is where to start. I know I have contemporaries at home, we talk about it all the time. We talk about our needs as middle-aged women whose children are getting ready to move outside the house. So now we want to focus on us. And we're thinking about companies that we would want to create that would focus on us. But where do we start? Do we come to the Innovation Lab? I mean, what does AARP have that would help someone like me who wants to get out there and provide something that I know other women I would share with you all my business plan, but I think somebody might steal it. But I need help getting it going. And for the venture capitalists, I'm sorry, I don't have
Robin.
my glasses on, so
Robin.
I can't see any of the words up there. Otherwise I'd say your name. But I loved what you said about finding your passion and then finding a VC who shares that with you. Well, where do I find the VC? I mean, what you all said was so wonderful, but for someone like me who does not have a business background, I'm coming from politics. Totally different. Totally different.
I'm scared.
So I'll say this. First of of all, we're going to run out of time, but afterwards, come up and talk to any of us about this. But I'll say this: the very proud thing that we do in the lab that I think is really exciting is our programming. And so, you know, in any given month, and I have to give a look at Jessica Wynn, who handles a lot of our events, who's sitting here on the front row at AARP Innovation Labs. We have a host of different organizations that host events in our space. For example, Black Women Talk Tech, who I think you should link up with, right? I think that it's much easier for you to be successful as an entrepreneur. I know that it's much easier for you to be successful as an entrepreneur if you surround yourself by people who are going through what you're going through, trying to figure out what you're figuring out. And so because we are out of time, but I do want to make sure that we pass along some resources to you of organizations who are here locally that have hosted in our space that might help you get to the next step of whatever it is. And I'll say, I think a huge part of it also is like starting. Like you might have this idea in your mind, and you know what's going to happen if you don't do anything, if you don't start. Like nothing's going to happen with it. It's just going to keep swimming in your mind.
You'll be in the same place.
Yeah, like you'll be here next week, next year, saying the same story, but you have to start. So, but please come talk after. I'd be happy to give you some more information. Okay. So I'm going to be respectful of time. The timekeeper is right here, and he's giving me an eye, and I don't want that eye anymore. So thank you to each of you. Thank you to Rick. Thank you to Dr. Charlene. Thank you to Robin.
Great job.
Thank you. I promised you something, and you're like, where is it? So first of all, please do connect with us. We are active on Twitter and also on Instagram. We're on Instagram at AARP Labs. Okay, and the first thing I want you to do when you go connect with us is follow us. Okay, that's number one. That's like the entry point. Follow us, connect with us. Also, while you're there, take a look at the link there, the actual description link that's both in Twitter and iLabs, because there is an invitation to our grand pitch finale. I talked about our pitch competition stops that focus on social isolation and social connection for 2019. We made 5 stops across the country, and at each stop, we invited at least 2 startups to come to be a part of the grand pitch finale, which is a pretty big pitch competition that we produce here in Washington, D.C. It's happening on Wednesday, October the 16th at Union Market. And you're all invited, but you have to RSVP. But if I notice that you RSVP and you didn't follow us, I'm going to reject your RSVP. I'm just joking. but I might do it. Oh, the access code, come up. Actually, it is BT Guest or BTGA 19. BTGA 19 is the access code.
BTGA
19. That's correct. Yep.
It's in the bio as well.
And it's in the bio. It's in the bio. I know it works. I know it works. If it didn't work, that would be embarrassing.
I know.
At any rate, we thank you all. We hope that this has inspired you to perhaps start something of your own or look at aging a little bit differently. But most of all, we hope that you understand now what AgeTech is, how it impacts all of us, and we look forward to the great things that you'll do in the future on your own or at an organization. So thank you all, and have a great evening.